there's not much difference between inner and outer war. It's really the same thing. An outer war between countries, arises because there's no ability to find peace with what is. And that ability starts inside, it starts in all of us. So it's good to inquire in ourselves, how are we at war with what shows up? How are we at war with what we perceive on the outside and what arises in the inside? And so maybe to start with, you could check with yourself, what is my tendency? How do I go to war with things? And just to give you an example of my own, as I was reflecting on that during the meditation, as I was asking myself that question, I saw two tendencies. One is, and that's probably the deepest one, is that I turn away and pretend it's not happening. It doesn't look like a way of being at war, but it is. Because it means that the perception that could be there of something that's disturbing, something that's painful, something that's heartbreaking, that perception is cut off, and and there's a diversion to something else, that's less painful, that's less disturbing. I grew up as a child in Germany, and I was surrounded. I grew up in a city that was bombed in the last months of the war. And so I grew up seeing, in the 60s and 70s, seeing ruins, seeing places that were fenced in the city, that were craters, essentially, from buildings that had been bombed. And also seeing the hill outside of town that was called the mountain of rubble, that was collected from all the buildings that had been bombed down, and that had become like a constant reminder of the destructivity of war. And as a child, I was very affected by that. I hadn't learned quite yet how to turn away. And so the reality of war really shook me very deeply. The destructivity of it, the sheer horror of everything crumbling, being destroyed. But because I was a very sensitive child, the turning away And the shutting myself off was a way of surviving. And so I learned that very well. And later on, my second strategy became to get angry and to go to war. Not literally, but I knew exactly what was right and what was wrong, and I was going to let everybody know. I knew who were the good guys and the bad guys, and and I was really at war with a society that I saw as unjust, and a world which I saw as unjust. So I'm wondering, what are your strategies? How do you go to war? Some people just feel very hurt and feel the pain and the grief, but in a way that implies that this shouldn't be happening, And this implication that this shouldn't be happening, rather than just the feeling of it, the feeling of the heartbreak. If you see an image of buildings that have been bombed out, or people that say goodbye, in a train station, to their loved ones who are fleeing while others stay and fight the war. How can you feel the pain of this world and not turn away, not take issue with it? How can we be in this world giving up all strategies we have of protecting ourselves, or fighting, or resisting, or trying to fix or change? And how can we be with ourselves, with what arises in us, and be affected by that without going to war, without turning to ways of fixing, fighting, pushing away, resisting? And peace always starts right here. It cannot start any other place. It starts with you. And it starts with all the little ways that you let go of, the little ways of being at war. The little ways of being at war with the war outside, the war in the Ukraine. Or the big ways. And you know, heartbreak is guaranteed in this life. Pain is guaranteed in this life. We can't protect against that. We can't fight that because it's simply part of our human existence. We can do our best. But you know, is it possible to see the unmoving, unfeeling face of Putin and not hate him? Is it possible to see that face and to know what he's doing? And to feel whatever that causes in you, you know, the anger that arises, the judgment, and receive that and realize that is a way that you're at war with Putin. And so that doesn't mean, you know, that we can't know at some level what is right and wrong. It's really ultimately only you who can feel for yourself what feels right to you and what feels wrong. And you may realize also that those things are, you know, they're always up for revision. We can't absolutely know right or wrong, you know, I don't think. What's more important is to be willing to feel what we feel in the face of certain situations. To feel that a situation is totally wrong, that war is wrong. To feel the horror of it, the heartbreak of it. And yet also know that it is happening, it is here. And it is an expression of life in this world, on this planet. And for there to be a possibility of being at peace, even as this is happening. Even as people are getting hurt and killed and wounded. As livelihoods are being destroyed, as people have to flee. Can we receive all of that and not go to war with it? That's really the question. And it doesn't mean we can't have opinions, you know. It just means that we can express the opinions coming from a place of peace, not from a place of war.